Hello and welcome to the program. This is Head to Head on UATV and I'm Oles Gerjuk. Ukraine has recently joined the World Initiative, so-called Child and Youth-Friendly Community, which was launched by UNICEF and is already operating its 12th year worldwide. This means that Ukraine is joining almost 40 participating countries and designates its priority to defend children's rights, which is the main agenda of the latter initiative. To tell us more about it, we welcome to the studio Artur Aivazov, Chief of Social Policy Section at UNICEF Ukraine. Hello and thank you for being with us, Mr. Aivazov.
Hello, thank you.
So tell us please, what does child and youth-friendly community mean and how does it differ from the regular usual communities?
Well, actually, that's one of the flagship programs of UNICEF, and as you rightly mentioned, the whole initiative started back in 1996 as a follow-up of UN Habitat II Convention, and UNICEF was promoting these initiatives in 38 countries. So basically, the whole idea is about closely working with municipalities and explaining them the rights of child and youth, and expanding particularly the participation component.
So is it based on the UN Convention on the rights of the child?
Absolutely. So this is a practical tool to apply Convention on the rights of the child at the very local level, at the level of municipalities, whether big or small, cities or towns.
But is there some inspection included?
Well, there is no such a thing as an inspection. It's a 100% voluntary process. So municipalities
It's more
need
about education.
Yes, so they need to apply, they need to be willing to participate in these initiatives, and that technically means that they agree and they commit to take this process seriously, because there are many other programs of technical assistance, support and learning, but this particular program requires additional efforts. So it's not about business as usual, it's about additional investment in children and youth, with particular focus on the most vulnerable in the community. It requires close work with children and youth to hear their opinion throughout the process, not just ask about whether they like some initiatives or not. So it is a closer engagement of children and youth in the community life, and as experience shows in many countries, this initiative turns to be a transformative philosophy. So from the very beginning, mayors or deputies or the staff do not take it really seriously, so they think it's a cool thing, let's start. But later on they recognize that by engaging youth and children, they change themselves and they better understand the needs of clients, and children and youth in this particular community feel better and feel recognized.
But is it about knowledge investment or some practical investment to also to develop infrastructure?
It's both. It's about knowledge investment, but also we are expecting that municipalities have some certain resources. So particularly in Ukraine, thanks to the reform of decentralization, there are many communities that are already established, so they have responsibilities in several sectors, including the social ones, but not only. They have some resources, but it's not always that they are quite clear, I wouldn't say what to do, but on the most effective ways of the implementation. So on one hand, this program is about knowledge management, but on the other hand, it helps municipalities to position themselves as the place that respects the rights of child and youth. Therefore, it supports their positive image. So in their dialogue with potential investors, donors, and also corporate sector, this is an additional argument to attract private investments in their communities.
Well, but I assume not everyone among our audience can recite some basic children's rights. So could you please remind us
well,
and which are the most problematic issues in Ukraine also?
Well, the basic children's rights are all stipulated in the Convention of the Rights of the Child, that starts from the right to life, right to health, right to education, right to be in a family environment, right to safety, and many others. So that's a comprehensive set of rights. And Ukraine is a signatory country for the Convention of the Rights of the Child. This year, Ukraine will report back. And in terms of the most problematics, I would say it's a relative, but we know that in Ukraine there are many children that are in residential care institutions. That's not really good, so the country needs to change its approach, and there are already certain reforms initiated by the government, how to transform these institutions and how to establish proper alternative care and family-based systems. It's not in order, but I would say the second one, and I would personally place it as the first, is the issue related to children with disabilities and their rights to be included in the society. So not only be part of the regular schools, mainstream schools, but also to be well received in the community and to be recognized. There are many others, and one in particular that I would emphasize is the conflict-affected children. So children living in the eastern Ukraine and children from the IDP families. So that's also a pressing issue. There are many others. There are many other issues, but these three, I would say, are some of the pressing ones today.
The pressing ones, right? And also the bullying is...
Absolutely.
Is it included also in this program?
Yes.
But this program, if there are almost 40 participating countries in this program, doesn't mean that there is cooperation between these countries and there is some experience that Ukraine can borrow from?
Exactly. So the scope of this program is also to not only to support Ukrainian municipalities, how to design this program, how to assess the situation of children's rights, how to prepare a proper action plan and budget it, but also to facilitate their exchange of experience between Ukrainian municipalities and those that are in other countries, in Germany, in Switzerland, in Canada.
Which also participate in this program?
Yes, yes. We have worldwide more than 3,000 municipalities participating, big and small. So, for example, it ranges from São Paulo to a tiny town in Italy that has only 300 inhabitants. So the program is relevant for all. And throughout the process, there is a recognition process. So basically, those municipalities that go through the process according to the methodology suggested, they receive a candidate status, first of all. Then they need to implement and really showcase that they are taking the program serious. So whatever they put on paper in terms of commitment and budget, they realize, implement. Then UNICEF evaluates. And then UNICEF provides them with a full-fledged logo of child and youth-friendly municipality that they can proudly use in all their communication, including in the official documents.
It gives some status to this community.
Yeah, it's a prestigious thing. So it's really, I would say, one of the beauties of this initiative. It creates, as we say always, it creates a healthy competition between municipalities, because mayors, local authorities, they kind of they like the prestigious things. But it's not only about prestigious things. It really creates a competition and stimulates learning from the peers inside the country, but also the peers that are outside.
And for instance, what are some practical recommendations, based on the experience of some other countries that could be implemented in Ukraine to change the situation?
There are many relevant ones. So what we're suggesting is pretty, I wouldn't say standardized, but regularized methodology. So they need to start from the assessment of situation. So municipalities need to understand what is the situation of child and youth rights in their municipality. They need to properly understand what are the problems. Then they need to decide on priorities. And we understand that immediately municipalities will not be in a position to respond to all these priorities. So there's scarcity of resources, there are competing priorities. But we are saying that in this particular program, 3 out of 5 dimensions, and we have these dimensions in the methodology, need to be respected. So one could be services, one could be participation, one could be recognition and proper treatment of child in the family. So in all these dimensions, in close consultation with children and youth, they need to identify something that we call an action plan, budgeted, because without budget it won't be implemented. So they need to commit their own resources. They need to find a way how to fundraise for the resources for the other programs that are difficult to implement or they require additional investments. But that gives them technically the possibility to claim themselves as the potential candidate. And there is a variety of projects that could be then derived from this one. They're free to select and prioritize whether safety spots, whether inclusive kindergarten. So there's this whole variety. The beauty of this program, again, is that it respects municipalities as independent local authorities, so it is not pushing them a certain agenda, but it is suggesting them an agenda that is kind of interesting, and it creates a better unity in the community.
Mm-hmm. Well, children's rights is obviously a very, very important topic, but there are also some basic procedures which are being complicated in Ukraine. For example, registering your kid in the kindergarten, then registering him or her at school. Then I mentioned bullying at school. This is already more important than this unreliable medical examinations by doctors and this Soviet practice when they're sure that kids in USSR were always healthy. So what can this program do about this, and what maybe there is some participating country that could rule as an example for Ukraine since the start of this project back in 1996, which developed the observance of children's rights significantly since then.
I mean, it's difficult to name one particular example in terms of country, because a country, well, Germany, in my view, Switzerland, second, UK.
But was there a bad situation back in 1996?
Well, I wouldn't say it was terribly bad, but there were some problems, and particularly the child and youth participation was not so proclaimed in these countries. But what you're raising is an interesting concern, and we clearly understand that municipalities have their own scope of responsibilities. So there are certain things that there's responsibility of the central government, but knowledgeable and willing municipalities can do a lot to soften and mitigate some of the bad practices. I'll give you an example. A city in Ukraine, I then named the city, introduced a special scheme several years ago on maternity insurance. So basically, it was not a state program. The city itself decided that this is a useful initiative. So all mothers that are kind of giving a birth to children in that particular municipality are entitled to certain privileges. So they kind of do it for free, and that was a city initiative. So on one hand, it was not required for this city to do certain thing, but they understand that it is their role, and there is a certain vulnerable category, that is mothers, and they recognize that mothers already kind of can be supported, and they introduced that practice. It's a Vinnytsia city. They did it several years ago, and this is an example that for us will be useful to be shared to others. And there are beautiful examples like that in many Ukrainian municipalities. So one thing that I want to also stress out is that this program allows Ukrainian municipalities to better exchange and share good practices. Countries pick, but there are beautiful initiatives happening, but not necessarily that they are visible for the peers.
Well, then thank you so much for your contribution, and then indeed our future and our future generations depend only on us and on our understanding of the word care. Thank you for this conversation.
Thank you.
That was Artur Aivazov, Chief of Social Policy Section at UNICEF Ukraine. Thank you for watching Head to Head. I'm Oles Gerjuk. Goodbye.